Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, and it is time for a preview of the 2023 Monte Carlo final between Andrey Rublev and Holger Rune. Rublev looking for the first Masters 1000 title, his third final. Rune trying to win his second Masters title, and he's still only 19 years old. It's been quite the Monte Carlo. It's such a shame for me that I haven't been able to cover it a little bit more from a YouTube standpoint, but I have been busy with commentary, mostly Billie Jean King Cup stuff, and that is why I couldn't come out with post-match videos for the quarters or the semis. I'll try to mention the semis as I go through this preview as much as I can, but even though it's really late and I'm tired, had to come out with this preview because this is such a exciting final in so many ways. Let's start by talking about their Australian Open meeting earlier in the year, because with those two Murray matches, the Murray match against Berrettini and Kokkinakis, the most memorable men's match of the Australian Open was probably Rune Rublev, the five-setter they played, fifth set tiebreak. So I'm thinking back to that match, and I watched it and I studied it pretty closely. I felt very strongly in that match that when Rune was executing his best tennis, Rublev didn't have much of an answer for it. The wide array of skills and the top shelf level that Rune was able to access was more than good enough for Holger to win that match. But Rublev had much better nerve management, much better focus, and over the course of the 5 sets, Rublev was able to play better tennis when leading, where Rune kept dipping rather dramatically when he had a chance to really pull away, up 5-2 in the 5th, up 5-0 in the deciding tiebreak, and Rune would just get overexcited and make mistakes. Rublev, in his position, wasn't going to do that. So I thought Rublev really leaned on his experience. You know, Andrey has won, I think coming into that match, he had already won 5 or 6 round of 16 matches at majors. Rune was coming off that huge fall, and he's still trying to make his kind of Grand Slam breakthrough and just wasn't ready for that occasion as much as Rublev was. So Rublev played a more mature, focused, steady match. Rune was a little bit all over the shop, but he had what it took to win. I felt strongly about that. So, as I always do in these previews, with that in mind, that's kind of the context, and I'll also just throw in the fact that Rune, on his terrific run at the Paris Masters last year, did beat Andrey Rublev. So the overall head-to-head is 1-1. Let me talk about the advantages that both players will bring to the court, in my view. Then I want to talk about the mental game, and then I'll give a prediction. So first, for Holger, I want to talk about his semifinal for a second, because Andrey Rublev and Jannik Sinner. What am I? Yeah. Wait. Sorry. I'm getting confused because we had Taylor Fritz in the mix here, and they're all kind of similar players, and my brain is a little bit scrambled. I said it right the first time. Jannik Sinner and Andrey Rublev, I've been saying this for years. They're similar players. They do similar things on the tennis court. You know, power baseliners. You can't hide on either wing. They take a lot of time away, hit very big. They rush you. They play offensive tennis pretty relentlessly from the baseline. So, what did Rune do against Sinner? It was a really good game plan. I loved his game plan. I think the same thing can work against Rublev. Rune backed up here, found himself as many forehands as possible, and made Sinner hit as many backhands as possible. It was a lot of high and heavy on the forehand, inside out, down the line to the to the Sinner backhand. And Jannik, first of all, was just struggling with that really heavy ball with a lot of height and a lot of topspin on it to his backhand. Struggling with that. You know, the clay courts reward that. He couldn't really do anything with it. He couldn't generate offense with it. And Rune was buying himself so much time to find that pattern because he was deep in the court, Sinner wasn't able to rush him at all. He wasn't able to deliver enough pace on the backhand side to really rush Rune. And Rune just it felt like he had all day to direct balls into the Sinner backhand. Ideally, if you're Sinner against other opponents in other conditions, ideally you're able to hit a big enough backhand that you get yourself a forehand. You win yourself a forehand with the quality of your backhand. But in these slow conditions, with Rune playing very deep, Sinner, it just didn't feel like no matter what he did on the backhand, he couldn't find himself a forehand. And that was the dilemma that he would really run into. And again, in these slow nighttime Monte Carlo conditions, it's going to be a little bit quicker for the final because it's going to be during the day, and I think it's going to be a bit warmer. Even with as powerful a two-handed backhand as Sinner has, he really needs forehands to finish the points against Rune's defensive skills and against his speed. And Rune, again, was staying in very good defensive position. He's got the power from deep in the court to attack. So I love that at Monte Carlo. I've talked about that for Stefanos Tsitsipas the last 2 years, how he's played so well in Monte Carlo. I love a player who can play deep in the court so that they're taking advantage of the slow conditions by maximizing their court coverage and using their athleticism with that deep court position, but they also have the power, particularly a big enough forehand, but Rune also has this enormous backhand to still be able to generate and turn defense to offense from that deep court position, and then to step in and even transition all the way forward to the net if necessary. Rune has that. He really has that. It helps on this court. So I think the game plan against Sinner is golden against Rublev. Make him hit a lot of backhands. Back up in the court so that he can't rush you. Play high and heavy. And then kind of wait for your turn to try to get that attackable ball, or grind Andrey down, which Rune has the ability to do. One of the big differences, moving on to kind of another point here, one of the big differences between Rune and Rublev, technically, really stood out to me in Australia, and I think it could be huge again here. Rune can turn defense into offense from his backhand corner. He can defend his backhand and flip the point around with his open stance, or even actually, he closes the stance quite well even when he's on the run, and he can hit kind of a big backhand from deep in the court when he's on the run. Rublev on the run, I don't like his open stance backhand as much. I don't like even his slice quite as much. I think when you slice on a clay court like this, you're probably in a bit of trouble anyway. But I feel that when Rune hammers his inside-out forehand or his down-the-line forehand into Rublev's backhand corner, he's going to have a ton of success. Rublev likes to do the same thing. He loves the inside-out forehand. He loves the down-the-line forehand. And that's his main weapon. So he wants to use that forehand to make progress in the point. Rune defends the backhand much better than Rublev. I think that's a huge technical advantage. The last point here is that Rune has the power to punish Rublev's second serve, which sometimes doesn't quite have the weight that some other players are able to bring on the kick serve. And if you look at the two Rublev-Rune head-to-heads previously at the Paris Masters and at the Australian Open, on quicker hard courts, Rublev won 45.5% of the second serve points in Paris, and then he won 47% of the second serve points in Australia, which is okay. It's good enough to win a match, but what is that going to be on a slow clay court? It's even tougher for Rublev to hit that 45 to 47 range, and if you dip below 45%, now you're certainly going to have some trouble holding your serve. So look for Rune to really rip that second return. All right, for Rublev, advantages. The biggest thing here is on the forehand, Rublev has more reliable footwork, higher RPMs at times, Now, Rune, when he's playing deep in the court and he's kind of going for the loopier ball, he can hit very, very heavy topspin. But I would say from attacking positions, Rublev accesses some more RPMs from inside the court when he's actually trying to hit kind of that more straight attacking ball. And also Rublev on the forehand, just sounder decision-making. He's very sure of himself, Andrey, always. That comes from, I guess, how comfortable he is with high margin aggression. When he's trying to build the point, when he's trying to be offensive, but he understands kind of that balance of not having to really finish the point and putting that continuous pressure offensively on your opponent. Where Rune, it's a little bit more 0 to 100, where he's kind of, when he attacks, he's usually trying to just finish. He's going for winners. He doesn't have that measured high margin aggression on clay courts. It's more lower margin aggression. So this was a super fancy and roundabout way to say that Rublev is more reliable on the forehand. I expect him to be more reliable when he's attacking, commit less attacking errors than Rune. And what it comes down to on a clay court, when your serve is a more muted weapon and you're playing more baseline rallies, and sure, you're going to have some drop shots, and sure, you're going to have some net play, but the largest percentage, the largest slice of the pie is going to be these players looking to attack with their forehands. That's the largest slice of the pie. And Rublev's is simply more reliable than Rune's. And that's a big deal here. Really big deal. The next thing is that Rublev could be more fresher physically and mentally. And we saw what happened to Medvedev. In this case, Rune was the beneficiary of that in the quarterfinal when Medvedev and Zverev played their epic deep into the night. And I think they finished at like 11 local time, something like that. Rublev, or rather Rune, finished his match around 10 p.m. local time in Monte Carlo. So that means an hour recovery, press, back to the hotel. You get to bed 12:30, 1 a.m. if you're Andrey Rublev. Sorry, I keep getting their names mixed up. They both start with an R. If you're Holger Rune, you get to bed probably at 1 a.m., no earlier than that. And we saw that can be a tough turnaround, and it could be without the day off with this condensed 1-week format. That's a mountain to climb. Rublev was first to finish, daytime finish for the semifinal. It ended up raining, so they finished in the afternoon. But there's no stress for Andrey in terms of his recovery time and his sleep. And he'll wake up probably feeling quite a bit better than what Holger Rune will wake up. So let's see if that plays a factor when it comes to Rune's ability to bring his best tennis to the court. But when it comes to bringing the best tennis to the court, this is a Masters 1000 final, and we know that the mental game is massive here. I'm not too worried about Holger when it comes to that part of the game. He's young, he's naive, he's already done this. I don't know how much expectation he really feels to win this final. I could be wrong, but again, it's not like he hasn't won the big one yet. He has. This isn't a major. If it were, well, that would be a different story. So he's won at this level, and I think he's got the kind of Alcaraz 2022 thing going on a little bit, where I just don't know how much expectation he really feels these days. He's not expected to win Monte Carlo. So I expect he'll be fine. It's Rublev who I'm much more concerned about. Andrey hasn't brought his best to the biggest matches of his career thus far. Masters 1000 finals. He's been in 2 of them. Tsitsipas, Monte Carlo, Zverev, Cincinnati. Wasn't able to win more than 3 games in a set in either of those matches. Same thing in that big semifinal he played last year at the year-end championships, where he came into a match against Casper Ruud. That was like a 50-50 match and a huge one for Andrey. That was a stinker performance. Wasn't even close to his best. He's also had some issues in major quarterfinals. I don't know. I didn't look. Is he 0-5 or 0-6 in major quarterfinals? It's something like that. Last year, lost one to Cilic, lost one to Tiafoe. He's had some tough ones in terms of, playing Medvedev on a hard court or Djokovic on certain occasions. So there have certainly been some tough ones here. Djokovic, of course, at the Australian Open this year. But those have been an issue as well. I don't really care that Rublev has lost these matches. Again, I'm willing to look at this with a lot more nuance than that. I do care that he hasn't been able to play like Andrey Rublev in these matches. So that's really the next step to me. Now, he might be able to skip a step and win, but I do feel like there's a step in between here, because thus far, he hasn't even been able to play well. Maybe he's able to play well here, and he doesn't win the match. To me, that would be progress. But first, I got to see him play well. Then he's got to close when it's time to actually, when the rubber meets the road and it's time to win the match. And that's another level. Is he going to skip 2 levels here? That's the question. Now, at the Australian Open, it was advantage Rublev in the mental department, and that was so clear from watching the match, because every time Rune was in a winning position, he bottled it, and Rublev was ice cold, ice in his veins, in those kinds of positions, no problem. But again, Rublev, it was a different situation. He was in a major round of 16 match. He's been there a million times before. He's won those matches. This is a different story. He hasn't won these matches, and he hasn't played well in these matches. And that's why I would be surprised if Rublev harbored the same nerve management advantage and composure advantage that he did in Australia, given what's on the line here. My prediction comes down to this, though, more than anything. I watched their Australian Open match, and I felt that, look, I picked Rublev to win that match because of the experience, and I was correct. But even watching that match and even picking Rublev and being proven correct, I still felt that given a little more experience for Rune under his belt, he would win the match. Because from a skill set standpoint, he does have a little bit more than Andrey. Let's see if that shows. Let's see if he's able to put it together and play his best tactics and play his best match and recover. And Rublev still brings so much to the table. So I'm going to stick with what I felt while I was watching that Australian Open match, which is that a couple months later, more experience for Rune, and he flips that result. Part of me hopes I'm wrong, because while I know that Rune has an entire career ahead of him, winning these kinds of matches, Rublev has put in all the work and really deserves one of these to go his way. It's been a lot of pain, a lot of anguish for him in these situations, and I'd love to see him win one, but I'm not predicting it. I'm going to go with Rune in 3. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.